I was trying to get in 15 minutes ago. Nobody, I don't know, some confusion here today. Anyway, now we're starting a little late. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurmilitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we'll welcome everyone to our ongoing study of Bhakti Vaibhava. We're on Unit 1 and we're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter and also third chapter. Okay, can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj. Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, this is lesson 4. Review, lesson 3. All right, what did we study in the last class? We'll have a look briefly what we went over. We saw quotes from verses in the second chapter from 6 to number 11, which we considered most useful in preaching. Were you able to select some quotes from there? They are important verses. For example, verse number 6 answers the first question of the sages about what is the ultimate good for all people. And that verse describes the supreme occupation for all humanity and so on. And then verse number 7 answers the second question, what was the essence of all scriptures? And the essence was described that by performing devotional service, we automatically develop causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. So that was the answer to the second question. Then text number 11 is also a very important verse, describes the nature of the absolute truth. Vadanti tat tattvam vidam tattvam yajnanam abhayam brahmati paramatmati bhagavan iti shabhyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance as Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. So these are certainly major important quotations in preaching Krishna consciousness. Some of you may like to add more. You may have taken some quotes from Prabhupada's purports. I don't know. Anyone like to contribute? Did you pick up anything? Have you marked anything? No volunteers?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes?
I considered from 2.9 dharmasya hi apavagrasya, that is occupational duties for ultimate liberation and not for material gain or sense gratification.
Yes, right. Good. That's a very important verse. Very nice. Well done. Yes.
Another verse, Maharaji, is verse number 8. That is dharmasya swapista punsam. So occupational duty are only useless labor if they are not provoked attractions for the Lord's necessity.
Yes, good. Useless labor. Shrama eva hi kevalam. If we don't develop our attraction for Krishna, it's just useless labor. All right, fine, thank you. And then, second point from lesson 3, the standard of first-class transcendental religion with reference to the second chapter, verses 6 and 7. What is the standard of first-class transcendental religion? Anyone understand this?
Paro Dharma, Maharaj.
Huh?
Paro Dharma.
Supreme Dharma, the supreme religion. Yeah, what is that supreme religion then?
Maharaj, in one of the PowerPoints you showed, it was mentioned, Prabhupada mentioning, that first class religion is which teaches us how to render service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in the PPT that you shared last time,
Yes.
the first class religion was which teaches us how to render service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And also in 1.2.8, Prabhupada writes in his purport that because foolish people have no information of the soul and how it is beyond the purview of the body and mind, they are not satisfied in performance of their occupational duties. So, like it mentions that it has to invoke, the detachment from all of this and attachment towards the service towards Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yes, very good. Very nice. Yes. Anything more?
Maharaj should develop love for God.
Yes, very good. Very important. Prem punarto mahan. The goal of life is to develop love of God. So first-class transcendental religion must be pleasing to the Lord. It must be pleasing to Him. We want to do service in a manner which is pleasing to Him. And that service should be, if we want to please Him, it should be ahaitaki and apratihata. Right? Meaning? What's the meaning? Ahaitaki and apratihata?
Sir, unmotivated.
Yes, unmotivated and?
Uninterrupted.
And uninterrupted, right. These two qualities are important in first-class transcendental religion. Not kaitava dharma, right? Everyone's cheating religion. They're all concerned with their sense gratification. Okay, then we went on to discuss the importance of occupational duties and Krishna consciousness with specific reference to congregational application. Right? Remember we spoke about the student, the young boy, he's studying to be a doctor, and he reads in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's all useless labor. Congregational application, people in the congregation, they're going to apply it in their way. People who are more like in Krishna consciousness, more committed in Krishna consciousness, they will apply it in a different way. So congregation, our movement has changed over the years. In Prabhupada's time it was definitely all ashram based, and today it's much more congregation based. So there are some big differences there in our application of the teachings. So we have to understand how to apply, how to implement the teachings of Krishna consciousness according to the time and circumstances, the situation. It's not going to be the same for everyone. For people in the congregation, they'll take it one way, and for people who are full-time devotees, they'll take it in a different way. So, occupational duties and Krishna consciousness, we have to understand how to apply these things in different situations, all right? Is everyone okay with that? Can we go on? Okay, we'll go on to hear about chapter 3, that Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And the first 5 verses describe the roles of the Purusha avatars in the creation. Right? Who are the Purusha avatars? Someone?
Bharat Garbhodakshai Vishnu and Karnodakshai Vishnu and Shirodakshai Vishnu.
Yes,
Three.
right. Right. Karanodakashai Vishnu, or Mahavishnu, who is laying in the causal ocean. And he's the cause of the initial cause of the creation of the material world. So you have the three Purusha avatars, Vishnu, all forms of Vishnu, and one is there in the Karana ocean, Karanadakshayi, the causal ocean, that's Mahavishnu, Karanadakashayi Vishnu, and from the body of Mahavishnu, the universes are coming out. One breath of Mahavishnu, and all the universes come out from the skin pores of Mahavishnu. And then the Lord Mahavishnu expands himself into each of these universes, and he is known as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. He enters into each of these universes. There's an infinite number of universes come out from the body of Mahavishnu, and the Lord enters into each of these universes, and then from his own body he produces perspiration, which forms an ocean in the bottom half of the universe. And then the Lord lays down on that ocean, the Garbhodak ocean. He lays down on the ocean, and then from his navel the lotus flower comes out. And Lord Brahma takes birth there. And then the Lord expands himself further as Shirodakashayi Vishnu. And as Shirodakashayi Vishnu, he is residing in Svetadvip, surrounded by the milk ocean, and at the same time he expands himself into the hearts of all living entities as the super soul. So these are the three Purusha avatars in the creation. We want to understand that these three avatars, they're all expansions coming from Lord Krishna. Right? So we said Krishna is the source of all incarnations. In this chapter we'll hear Purusha avatars, they also have their origin in Lord Krishna. So we do know a lot of people who, they accept Vishnu as the supreme, and we have of course other sampradayas like the Sri Vaishnavas. They worship Vishnu as the supreme, as the personality of Godhead, and they see Krishna as avatar. They have difficulty to understand Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they simply think Krishna is the avatar. They don't actually agree with us. Anyway, there's some differences which we have between the sampradayas. There are other differences, but that's one of the differences. We want to understand these things. We're following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has taught us the position of Lord Krishna, how he is the original source of all incarnations, and will be supported here with evidence in this chapter. All right, so the three Purusha avatars are mentioned there in the first 5 verses. And then the chapter goes on, text 6 to up to 27, and we'll hear about different Leela avatars. There are 22 incarnations mentioned. Actually, there are an infinite number of incarnations, but only 22 are mentioned. And at the end of the 22, after mentioning the names of 22 incarnations, then in the 28th verse, then you have this Paribhasha Sutra, or what is Jiva Goswami describes as the emperor verse. The emperor verse, the verse which is above all others. And it establishes very clearly the position of Lord Krishna as the source of all the avatars. Ete chamsa kalapumsa Krishna tu Bhagavan Swayam. Ete cha amsa. Ete cha amsa. Amsa meaning plenary portions, and kala meaning portions. So like this, Jiva Goswami analyzes the meanings of these different words, and he explains to us, based on this text number 28 in this third chapter, that Lord Krishna is not just simply the origin of all incarnations, but he is the origin of what is the origin of the incarnations. The incarnations generally come in the universe, generally they will come from Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, right? Because he's there at Svetadvipa, and from him different incarnations will come. But Kshirodakashayi Vishnu himself, he has his origin in Lord Krishna. So Lord Krishna is the origin of all the incarnations. He is the primal source of all potencies. So that's shown here, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. By saying Bhagavan Swayam, the term Swayam indicates that he's not just simply Bhagavan, because we could also describe others as Bhagavan, but he is Bhagavan Swayam. He's the original Bhagavan. He is the original person from which everything is coming. And Brahma and Shiva, they also have their origin in Krishna. Right? So that is discussed in text number 28. Prabhupada gives a nice purport there explaining how Krishna is the original Bhagavan. And he mentions about the different qualities of Lord Krishna. For example, and we know from our study of Rupa Goswami's teachings in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that he has analyzed 64 different qualities. And he has shown that out of 64 qualities, Lord Krishna possesses all 64, but Lord Vishnu only has 60 out of 64. And Lord Shiva has 55 out of 64, and Lord Brahma and perfect living entities, jivas, they have 50 out of 64. So in this way, he establishes the supreme position of Lord Krishna over everything. And then, that's 28, then 29, verse 29 goes on to describe about the benefit of reciting of the appearances of the Lord. If we will recite in the morning and the evening of the Lord's different pastimes appearing in different incarnations, it will give us liberation from the material existence. And then the chapter goes on to describe the Lord's incarnations to achieve ecstatic love. Talks about, first of all, we hear about the universal form, and that the universal form's not very important. It's only for very neophyte people who cannot understand the divine form of the Lord. And then we hear also about the importance of, the final question of Srimad Bhagavatam, or the final question of the sages was answered, that because Lord Krishna departed from the world, so where are the religious principles found? And the answer was given, Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's there at the end of the third chapter. Okay, there's a bit more here. Yeah, so text 40 to 44, Sutta Goswami glorifies the Bhagavatam as the incarnation of Krishna. Right? Srimad Bhagavatam is a literary incarnation of Krishna. And he describes how the Bhagavatam was transferred from Vyasadeva to Sukadeva to himself. So the Srimad Bhagavatam was Vyasadev's mature contribution. He was empowered by Lord Krishna to write so many books. Of course, Vyasadeva himself is an incarnation of the Lord. And he was empowered, and he composed the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then he gave that knowledge to his son Sukadeva. And Sukadeva Goswami then passed it to Sutta Goswami, because Sutta Goswami was present when Sukadeva Goswami was speaking Srimad Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit was cursed to die, of course. He had 7 days to live, and many great personalities all came to hear Sukadeva recite. Srila Vyasadeva came himself, and Narada Muni also came himself. They were all eager to hear Sukadeva speak. And Sutta Goswami also came. So later on, Sutta Goswami, after hearing the Bhagavatam, he went back to Naimisharanya, and he took over from his father, and he spoke there to all the sages in the Naimisharanya forest. And that's where we are in the first canto here, in the second chapter, third chapter. We're hearing Sutta Goswami answer the questions of the sages of Naimisharanya, glorifying the Bhagavatam, right? This Bhagavat Purana. Of course, that was glorified when they were asked, where are the religious principles to be found now that Lord Krishna is gone? And the reply was given, Krishne swadamopagate dharma jnana dibisaha kalo nishtam drishamesha puranarto dranodata. That this Bhagavat Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna for his own abode. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of this age of Kali will get light from this Purana. So very important, the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is why Srila Prabhupada dedicated so much of his time to writing Srimad Bhagavatam, to presenting it for us. So this is the literary incarnation of Krishna in the Kali, and the religious principles are there in the form of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And we're encouraged at the end of this third chapter, in I think it's text 43 and 44 in the purports there, Srila Prabhupada describes it simply by reading Srimad Bhagavatam. One day you will see Krishna in the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he also describes what we need to do in order to fix our mind properly, to understand this Srimad Bhagavatam. We have to control the mind. And he explains how to control the mind. He says, one cannot steady the mind who is not pure in action. And one cannot be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So like that, we have to be pure. We have to give up all nonsense activities, all things which have nothing to do with Krishna consciousness, and we have to fully dedicate ourselves to Krishna consciousness. Then we can actually understand Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Prabhupada concludes that chapter by saying, still, if one in the very beginning is given a chance to hear this message of Srimad Bhagavatam from a representative of Sutta Goswami, then in time he will see Krishna in the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. All right? So that's the third chapter, the main points. Let's see here. We want to talk a little bit about this. If you're going to do these things, we should talk about it first. Refute demigod worship, which was discussed in the second chapter, text 23 up to 29. So, you've studied, of course, this. From Bhagavad Gita, you know that these points have been brought up in the Bhagavad Gita, the problems and the defects with demigod worship, right? What's the main problems?
Birth, death, old age, and disease.
Well, can you explain, please, in a more clear manner? What are you, I'm talking about, I want to know what that's got to do with demigod worship. Could you please explain to me?
Maharaj, I just heard the problems. I could not.
Huh?
Maharaj, I could not hear properly. I just heard the problems and then I thought about this. I am just thinking about the question. Sorry, Maharaj.
Maharaj, so basically if we worship the demigod, then we will go back to the locus of demigod, or he will be giving this material wealth, and with that we will develop more attachment and it will lead to the suffering. So ultimately we will not be able to come out from the cycle of birth and death.
Yes, right. We know that worship of the demigods, the results of demigod worship, antavat tu palam tesham tad bhavati alpamedisham, right? That the results are always limited and temporary. So worshipping demigods will bring us those kind of results. For people who have strong material desires, they will be inclined to demigod worship because quickly they can get results, but the results will be material and they will be limited and temporary. And the actual defect with demigod worship is that it's not going to take us out of the material world. We will have to remain in the material world. As Maharaji said, birth, old age, disease and death. So this is actually the real problem, that if we worship demigods, we're not going to solve the problem of life, which is birth and death. So that's a major point in defeating demigod worship. Of course, people may worship demigods such as Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, but they will also not actually be able to take us fully out to the spiritual world. We have to recognize that they are not supreme, that they themselves are servants of the Supreme Lord. People become confused, they think all the gods are one, all the gods are the same. But there's a difference, there's certainly a difference. Lord Brahma is associated with the mode of passion because he has to do creation. And Lord Shiva is associated with the mode of ignorance because he's involved, he's given the work of destruction. At the time of the annihilation of the universe, he's given that task. So he's associated with Tamagun. But Lord Vishnu is in the mode of goodness. And the mode of goodness is certainly recommended over passion and ignorance. So if we, by worshipping Lord Vishnu, then we can get real knowledge and we can keep away from the modes of passion and ignorance. And that's important. Many demigods do reflect the modes of passion and ignorance. But those people who want to cultivate goodness, they will engage in the worship of the Supreme Lord, Vishnu, and his different forms, different names of the Lord. Of course, Lord Krishna, when we say Lord Vishnu, we include also Lord Krishna. So in this way, we defeat demigod worship. All right? And then we also talk about an analysis of the various kinds of avatars. So this is mentioned in the first 5 verses of the 3rd chapter. We did, and if you look in your student manual, you'll see there's also a chart there. Have you seen the chart there? Did you look at the chart? I hope so. I hope so. I hope you saw the chart. Anyway, you can see the different kinds of avatars.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we have Purusha avatars. What other kinds of avatars do we have? What are the other kinds of avatars?
Lila avatar, Guna avatar,
Yuga avatar.
Lila avatar, Yoga avatar, and what else?
Satyavaishya.
Gunavatar, Satyavaisavatar.
Manvantar Avatar.
Manvantar Avatar.
Okay, Manvantara avatars. Okay, some different kinds
Leela
of...
Avatar.
Yeah, we got that, little avatar. Okay, so there are different kinds of avatars. And they all have their different functions. They're all on the level of what? Are they all Vishnu Tattva?
No, they are mode of passion.
Really? Avatars are mode of passion?
Not all, maybe, but few.
Maharaj,
No,
all
all
are
are
Vishnu
Vishnu
Tattva.
Tattvas.
No, Maharaj.
No, some are empowered jivas also.
Jiva Tattvas.
Yes, some are the Shakti Avesha avatars. They are jivas who are empowered, right? Empowered living entities. Okay, so there are different kinds of avatars. We should understand their merits and their different functions, and they're all empowered from the one Supreme Lord. And then, why is Krishna Bhagavan Swayam described in text number 28? That's we talked about that. The Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam. So we would like you to somehow present some kind of poster like this, and you can give some references to the Sanskrit verses and statements from the purports and analogies from the purports. We would like to hear from you, students. What we will do, we have 3 topics, so we'll divide the topics, right? We can have, how many people are here in the class?
33 Maharaj.
33 Maharaj.
33.
33.
Okay, 33. So we'll have six groups. All right, we'll have 6 groups, and the 6 groups, so it means 5 or 5 people, or some groups will be 6 people. And we would like you to, first group will take demigod worship, and we'd like to hear you refute it. And then second group will give us an analysis of the different kinds of avatars. You may like to also look in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's in Madhya Lila, chapter 20, where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is instructing Sanatana Goswami, Sanatana Shiksha. In chapter 20, it begins about text number 170, where he talks about the different kinds of avatars. Or you can simply use the chart, which is there in the student manual. It's all there in the student handbook. And you can explain the different avatars. All right, in group number 3, you have to tell us why Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam. Now, did you get that article I sent a couple of days ago? Did you get that from Krishna Sandarbha by Jiva Goswami?
Yes, Maharaj.
Did you read it? No?
Maharaj.
Well, it's presented in a readable form. It's taken from Back to Godhead. So it's quite readable. It's not very scholarly. It's not too high. Anyway, you can simply work with Prabhupada's purport, and you can give me information from Prabhupada's purport. Why is Krishna Bhagavan Swayam? Right? So those are the 3 topics. So we'll have six groups. Group 1 and 2 will do demigod worship. Group 3 and 4, we want to hear about the avatars. And group 5 and 6, Bhagavan Swayam. Why is Krishna Bhagavan Swayam? All right? We don't have a lot of time. We'll just give you, is 5 minutes enough time for you to do this?
Maharaj, can you show the second slide?
Which, this one?
Maharaj, after group exercises, what all we have to collect?
Oh, okay, yeah, right, yeah. Yes. References to Sanskrit verses, support from Bhagavad Gita, analogies or statements from the purports. Okay, we'll give you 10 minutes. All right. So who's making the groups?
I'm making like I'll just do it assign automatically.
Okay.
Making like I'll just do it assign automatically.
I'm sorry, Manager, I'm not able to hear your voice. It's not clear.
But the groups are now open. People are joining.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam.
So what question are we doing? We're doing the avatars, right?
Yes, yes. We are in which group? Group 4?
Yes, group 4. Group 4, we're working on the second question, the
Yeah.
avatars. Okay?
Yeah.
So how is it all described? It's mentioned, actually it was mentioned in the 3rd chapter, the beginning of the 3rd chapter, wasn't it? How there are different parts of the Lord. Was it mentioned there?
Yes, this slide, no? Slide.
I'm just trying to remember where I saw it. Oh, that he mentions also that the vibhutis are also there. Vibhutis are there from the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So vibhutis are... So we want to have some quotations, some of these different verses. What's a good verse as far as to show vibhutis? We have directly empowered incarnations. The Kumars, Narada, Prithu, Shesha, Ananta. And indirectly empowered are called vibhutis. So there's directly empowered incarnations and there's the indirectly empowered, who are all the vibhutis. Right? Vibhutis, you know some vibhutis from the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita?
Maharaj, others are not actually unmuted their mics, looks like. There are 3 other, okay, no, she has come.
Oh.
There are 2 others, Dilnath Das and Padasarthik Devadasi haven't unmuted it so far.
Okay, so how many of everybody take a verse. Each one we have the first 5 verses of the 3rd chapter. So each one of you take one verse and come up with points from that verse. All right?
Okay. So
Right.
I'll take the first one.
Who's taking the first one?
Dinanadas, me.
Okay, who's taking second one?
I'll take the second one.
Thank you,
I'll take
Mary.
number 2.
Number 2, thank you, Manaji. Yes. Number 3.
Which chapter? Third, na?
Who's taking verse number 3?
Maharaj, I will take that.
Number 3, yes. Thank you, Mataji. And then number 4, who's left?
Maybe me.
You're 4?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Maharaj is third chapter, right?
Yeah?
Third chapter and fourth sloka, na? Third chapter,
Yes,
fourth sloka.
third chapter, right.
Fourth sloka.
Oh.
Looks like we are going to come out of the groups in Maharaj.
Sorry?
There was just a message saying that we're going to be coming out of our groups.
Oh, okay. Have you got your thing together? Have you read the verse? You got the main points? Oh, okay, good. So I guess we'll each have to do our own verse. I don't know. It's difficult to put it all together. We can each do one verse.
Yes, that's better. Go.
Recording in progress.
Okay, everyone's back? Everyone's back?
Yes, Maharaj. 34 participants.
Okay, so let's hear from group number 1. They're going to tell us about what?
Yes, Maharaj. Dhanyavad Pranam, Maharaj. So we are going to tell about that the feud of worship demigods.
Okay.
Yes. So as we just discussed about why one should not regard to the worship demigod, although if they want, they can, but that's not required. So in the purport of 1.3.27, we can see that Prabhupada is saying that the demigods are the servant of Lord. So as they are duly bound to the supply necessary of the life in the form of water, light and air. So we can see that demigod are the administrator or servant of Lord. So whatever if one person is worshipping demigod and whatever they are actually one from them, that is they are taken from demigods are taken from Krishna and they are given to us. Also we can see in the 1.3.23 purport that no demigod can release us from or they can deliver us apart from the Supreme Lord Krishna. Also from Bhagavad Gita 4.12, we see that whoever worship demigod, that is the fruit that is temporary, that is not permanent. So that is restricted to this material world and that increase the bondage with this in this death and life cycle. Also, we just discussed that the Bhagavan's 3 guna avatar, among 3 guna avatars, Shiva and Brahma, they are also cannot deliver us except Vishnu. So next in Bhagavad Gita 4.12, we see that Krishna, those who want to enjoy the fruit of their worship to demigods, they actually worship demigods, but the devotees who worship Krishna, they are not actually desire to have any food apart from seva of the Supreme Lord. Also in the 1.3.28 purport, we can see that Prabhupada is saying Krishna is only worshipable. No other demigods are required to worship. So from all this point, we can see that we don't require to worship demigods. We should worship Krishna directly.
Okay, thank you. Very nice. All right. Thank you, Mataji. Yes, let's hear group number 2.
So our question is also the same. There is no demigod worship. So we took some verses from Bhagavad Gita. First is chapter 7, verse number 20. Kamasya Rapahatyana Prapadyante Anya Devata. Here Srila Prabhupada is saying that those who are less intelligent, they basically out of their material desires, they surrender onto demigods. And
that's why they take shelter of demigods. And also the Antavattu Phalam Tesham Shloka, where it is said, even if they get some benediction from the demigods, those benediction are limited. Because this material world is limited and demigods living here are limited, they also face birth and death. So the benedictions given by them is also limited. And the third thing which we took from Bhagavatam is that Bhagavatam is saying that Canto 2, chapter 3, verse number 10, that akama sarva kamo ka moksha kama udareti tivrena bhakti yogena yajita pusha para. Even if you have some desire, don't go to demigods. Just surrender onto the Supreme Personality, and your desires, even if you have less desire, many desires, or no desire, it will be fulfilled simply by taking shelter of Lord Shri Krishna. And again here, in one, there is wonderful analogy that Srila Prabhupada is giving here, that these demigods are just like caretakers. In the sense, Prabhupada gave this analogy that just like a cashier in an institution, he takes care of all the money, but he can't distribute it on his will. So he has to take permission from the authorities. So in the same manner, demigods are taking care of this material world. Varun Dev, Indra Dev, so many demigods are taking care of so many things. But if they have to give any benediction to their worshipper, they have to take permission from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because Ishopanishad says that Isha Vasam Idam Sarvam, everything belongs to Krishna, it is Krishna's property. So in order to avail the facilities or to get some benefit from demigods, they have to refer to Krishna, that Krishna, can I give all the benediction to my worshipper? And if Krishna says, okay, you can, because you are also my servant and I want that your position remain as a good demigod, so you may give the worshipper the intended benediction. So some points.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Yes, quite a few Sanskrit verses there. You were quoting nicely from the scriptures to support your statement. Thank you, Mataji. Now let's go ahead. Group number 3. We'll hear about the avatars. Yeah, who's the spokesman?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, His Example Princess.
Hare Krishna.
Respectful obeisances to all the devotees. We had to discuss about the Purusha avatars from verses 1 to 5 of chapter 3. So we make a small presentation on that. I would like to share the screen, a quick analysis of the subject.
Okay. What's it, a drawing? You have a present? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
So we come to know about Purusha avatars in these verses. Lord Krishna expands, a portion of Lord Krishna expands into Mahavishnu, also known as Karnodakshaya Vishnu. And from Karnodakshaya Vishnu comes out the ingredients for material creation known as Mahatattva. Also the 16 principles of material creation are manifested by him. And from the infinite pores in the body of Karnodakshaya Vishnu, infinite universes come out. In each of those universes, then his expansion, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu enters, and the purpose of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu is that he gives birth to Lord Brahma, he gives birth to the different planetary systems, he is the source of Nidhanam of all the incarnations that come forth, and he is the seed of all the incarnations, and all the demigods and other living entities are created by his portions and independent portions. So that was a quick analysis of the Purusha avatars, Maharaj.
Okay, very good. In 10 minutes you did a very good job. Yes, interesting.
Thank you, Maharaj.
All right. Okay, we'll hear from group number 4. I was in group number 4 and we divided it up in a different way. We had 5 people, so each of us took a verse. So we have the different devotees speak on their verses. All right, who took the first verse?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I'll speak on the first verse. Now, the first verse in in the purport of the first verse, Srila Prabhupada mentions that Lord Krishna maintains the material universes by extending his plenary expansions. The first of the expansions is Canto Vishnu, who is also known as Mahavishnu. And just with his glance, he impregnates the material sky. This is also substantiated in the Bhagavad Gita, I think 8.19. Bhuta grama sa evayam bhutva praliyate ratri agame vyasa partha prabhavati agame. That is, in every day of Brahma, the universe is created, and every night of Brahma, it is destroyed. And the Mahat Tattva is let loose during the creation, which consists of 5 gross elements and 11 working senses. And it also in the purport, Prabhupada said that the eternally conditioned souls on Nitya Bhatta, because they have the sense of individuality or ahankar, they are the enjoyed. That is, the living beings are the predominated enjoyer. And the Lord is the only enjoyer. So whosoever, takes the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, he attains the spiritual kingdom. So this basically talks of the creation of the universe by Canto Vishnu and the let loose of the Mahat Tattva.
Okay, Prabhu, thank you. Yes, who did verse number 2?
I did verse number 2, Maharaj. My name is Pathasarathi Devadasi. So the verse number 2 was a summary of the 3 Purusha avatars. The first one's Karanadakashay Vishnu, Drivadakashay Vishnu, and Shiradakashay Vishnu. Which was summarized previously. One in the purport, Prabhupada says, one who knows the plenary features properly of these Purusha avatars is freed from the material condition of birth, old age, disease, and death. It talks about the power of the Purusha, that there can never be anything without a cause, and that the Purusha is cause of this is the point of the Purusha avatars. And you mentioned to go to the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and Mata Leela. So I found text 244 and 245. And there Prabhupada is distinguishing, in the purports, the difference between the Purusha avatars and the Leela avatars, where the Purusha avatars are the lords of the universal creation, and the Leela avatars are the performance of the pastime. So to understand the Purusha avatars is to become free from the suffering of birth and death.
Okay, good. Thank you, Maraji. Very nice. Yes, verse number 3.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. I took verse number 3. Maharaj, in this verse, they are giving the concept of a Virat Rupa, saying universal planetary systems are situated on the extensive body of Purusha, and he has nothing to do with the created material ingredients. Maharaj, in purport, Rupa saying that this Vishwarupa is especially meant for neophytes who can hardly think of transcendental form of personality of Godhead.
Okay. Thank you, Maraji. Yes? Verse number 4.
Yes, Maharaj. Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Pranam to all. So, this shloka is mentioned about the Sahasrapada Bhujanam Adbhutam. Means there are thousands of arms and Sahasra Murdha. So what is said in this shloka, that there are this form object of the form Krishna. If the devotees with the perfect eyes can only see this divya form of Purusha, who has thousands of eyes and legs, also legs and thighs and arms and faces, all extraordinary. And the main thing is that if you don't have a spiritual vision, then you cannot perceive anything which is divya to the Lord. So there is one sloka in the Bhagavad Gita in the 11th chapter, just ground to which says, where it says that Arjuna saw the universal form with unlimited mouths, unlimited eyes, unlimited wonderful visions. Now this form was decorated with many celestial ornaments. On all these things, only things you cannot see if you have a divine vision. And to have that vision, you should have devotional service. for that. So unless you are devoted to the Lord, unless you are whatever you are chanting and seeing all those things, so if you don't have that, then you cannot see the beautiful form of Lord Sri Krishna. So therefore, if the process of experiencing the mundane object, it is more perfectly applicable in matters of accidental. So only with patience and says but only with patience and perseverance can we realize the accidental such matter regarding the absolute truth. So you should have that divine vision or divine eyes to see all these things which can be possible only with the devotional service. So devotional service bhakti is very important in this case.
Okay, thank you very much, Prabhu. Yes, thank you. And I'll just conclude with the 5th verse. In the 5th verse, Srila Prabhupada points out that people try to establish themselves as incarnations, but incarnations of God have to be established on the basis of Shastra. And without the support of Shastra, no one can be an incarnation of God. And Prabhupada then talks in detail about some different avatars like the Manus, and he said, Prabhupada does the calculation for one lifetime of Brahma, and he shows that in one lifetime of Brahma you have 504,000 Manus. So that's one universe. One universe has more than 500,000 Manus, and there's an infinite number of universes. So just imagine how many Manus there are. Manvantaras, there's so many of them. And then Prabhupada also talks about there's directly empowered avatars and indirectly empowered. So directly empowered incarnations are like the Kumaras, Narada Muni, Prithu Maharaj, Ananta Shesha, and the indirectly empowered avatars, that is Vibhutis, which are mentioned in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna describes his Vibhutis. Of flowing rivers, I am the Ganges. Of mountains, I am Meru. Of immovable things, I am the Himalayas. I am the light, I am the syllable Om in the Vedic mantra, the light of the sun and the moon, the intelligence of man. So many different vibhutis are mentioned there in the 10th chapter. So this is indirect empowerment from Lord Krishna. So this is from the 5th verse. All right, we'll go ahead. Let's hear group number 5. They were discussing about Krishna as Swayam Bhagavan.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I'm representing my group number 5. So we discussed about Krishna being the Swayam Bhagavan, which is mentioned into the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam that starts with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the first prayers are said to given to the Bhagavan, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the other references we had was from the Bhagavad Gita, verse 14.4, Sara Yonishu Kamtaya Murtaya, that understood that all the species of life come from him. It's possible through him because he's the seed-giving father. And from the verse 10.8, the Chatushlokis of the Bhagavad Gita, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava, where Krishna himself says that I'm the supreme absolute truth, the source of all spiritual and material worlds. And Arjuna himself in the 10th chapter, verse 12 and 13 mentions that you are the supreme Brahman, the ultimate absolute truth, and you are the primal God. From the purport, we discovered that the 64 principal attribute, that the Krishna is the Saman Bowman, and he is one without a second. And in terms of the analogies from the purport, originally the Lord is full of all opulences, like all powers, all fame, beauty, all knowledge, and all renunciation. When they are partly manifested through the plenary portions, it should be understood that they are there for certain powers and particular functions. But when in the room, small electric bulbs are displayed, it doesn't mean that the electric powerhouse is limited by the small bulbs. The same bulb house can illuminate the large industrial diamonds. Similarly, the incarnations of the Lord display limited powers for a certain period of time. Yes, I think we have covered everything. Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, thank you, Mataji. That was a nice analogy that you brought there. Brought out the analogy about the so many lights may be there, but it doesn't mean the powerhouse is limited to lights. Okay, very nice. We could ask a question. Sometimes the question comes up that Krishna is the avatar, but he comes himself as an avatar. So he's the source of the avatars, but he comes also himself, you know. And so this is actually a devotee brought this question up to me in the last class. So I can't remember, one of the men, anyway, he asked this question to me in the last class. He said that Krishna's an avatar, but he's the 19th avatar, but he's also the origin of all the avatars. So how is it, you know? So Jiva Goswami discusses this. If you read that article which I sent you, which is taken from the Krishna Samhita, and then Jiva Goswami explains there. Okay? So you can all try, if you get a chance, you can read that article. Let's hear group number 6.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So what we decided that we will make a group presentation. So I will set the introduction and then other team member will take up. So as Jiva Sandharva, Jiva Goswami says that this 3.28 sloka, that is Eta Chamsa Kala Kumsa Krishna Tu Bhagwan Swayam, this comes under Paribhasa Sutra. And Paribhasa Sutra stands for that, I rightly said that in previous verses it is said that Krishna is also one of the avatar, but Paribhasa Sutra, it supersedes all other statements. So whenever there is a contradictions, then we have to understand, we will take the meaning of Paribhasa Sutra, and where Krishna at only one places it clearly mentions that Krishna to Bhagwan's Swam. So he is the source of the all incarnations. So we have few statements that he has got all the 64 opulences and all the directly and indirectly incarnations are manifestations of Krishna. So now I will leave it to my other team member to explain about references and analogies. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Tanvat Pranam. So, in the verse 1.3.28, it is explained in the first paragraph, an analogy is given that Krishna is like a powerhouse and different incarnations are like electric bulbs. So powerhouse is supplying the power to the electric bulbs also, but his power is not limited to that only. He can display unlimited power. So similarly, Krishna is the source of all incarnations, and incarnations are showing his limited power. In the second paragraph, it is explained more nicely that different incarnations exhibit different opulences. There it is said that the incarnations of Rama and Dhanvantari displayed his fame. Balram, Mohini and Vaman exhibited his beauty. Dattatreya, Matsya, Kumar, Kapil exhibited his transcendental knowledge. Narayan exhibited renunciation. So in this way, different incarnations show different opulence, but Krishna is full in all 6 opulences. And in the third paragraph, it is mentioned that different incarnation possess some portions of the qualities, but Krishna possesses all 64 qualities. That's why he is the source of all incarnations. He is not the avatar, but he is the avatari.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So Maharaj, I'm from group number 6. Please accept my humble obeisance and all obeisance to all the devotees. So in Krishna Sandharva, I will speak from some point from Krishna Sandharva. So Srila Jiva Goswami says that there is one way to analyze the text, that the opening verse and the last verse should have the same conclusion. So in the first verse, there is said that Jagre Porisham Purusham Bhagwan Mahat Advi. So here the word Bhagwan is used. And the last verse, that is 28th verse of that it is said that Eti Chans Kala Punsha Krishna to Bhagwan Swayam. So Srila Jiva Goswami pointed out that for analyzing a text, the opening verse and the last verse of the section should have the same, on the same level. So this is one of the way Srila Jiva Goswami presents. Second, Shilaji Goswami said that the Bhagwan word is not used in any Leela avatars of. It's not used in Matsya avatar, it's not used in other Kalki avatar, in Buddha avatar. It's specifically used in this particular verse that shows that that this verse is actually his emperor verse. And one more point, Shilaji Goswami analyzed with his brilliant scholarship. Shilaji Goswami said that Ete word itself says that all the avatars, and Cha, that the word Cha says that all different avatars which cannot be mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, because there are millions of avatars. So he said this, after this, the placing of verse on the 20th number itself is a proof that Krishna is Bhagavan Swami. Ete and Cha concludes all the avatar that is mentioned before and that is discussed before in the Akshatra. So these 3 points.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. From Krishna Sandarbha here. 3 quotation, 3 examples there. Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Very good.
Maharaj, Prabhupada explains in the purport in the 3rd paragraph that Swayam word is very important. Swayam word Lord Krishna has no other source than himself. And in nowhere it is meant, like Prabhuji said, that nowhere Krishna is, other incarnations are mentioned as Bhagwan, but only in the 1st verse and the 28th verse they are mentioned as Bhagwan. Because of their specific functions, nowhere are they declared to be the Supreme Personality. Because they only have this, some specific functions, they are not told as Supreme Personality. Only Krishna is told that I am Bhagwan.
Okay, thank you, Maraji.
The Swami confirms.
Yes? Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj,
yes,
and all the devotees. Also from group 6, during our discussion, as Prabhu have explained regarding this Jiva Goswami 6 Sadnama, the reason he gives that the verse is connected to the first verse of the chapter 3. And if we see further, the chapter 3 first verse is actually connected to chapter 2, text 30 to 34, which actually proclaim the supremacy of Vasudeva. So in this way, we can also connect it directly to the Eta Chamsa Kalapumsa verse, which also giving the supremacy of Krishna as the Swayam Bhagavan. And another point that from Six Samrabha is that Jasna Maharaj was saying that Krishna was mentioned as an incarnation, but here Jiva Goswami used the Purva Mimamsa logic. In the logic, he says that when a statement is given later, that is more powerful than the previous statement. So here it was Ete Chamsa Kalapumsa giving us the conclusion that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But even though in chapter 2 it was mentioned that he is an incarnation on the 9th incarnation. So example given by Jiva Goswami here says, sometime somebody will ask, give me a glass of water. But then later he said, give me a glass of milk. So Jiva Goswami explained, the later one should be accepted, not the first one. So this is the explanation given in the article, Maharaj.
Yes,
Thank you, Maharaj.
very good. Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice. You brought out this point. Yeah. So these points are all there in that article which we sent you from the Krishna Sandarbha, from Jiva Goswami. His brilliant thinking. Okay, thank you very much for your participation in that nice exercise. Very nice to hear from all the devotees there. We'll go ahead here. Here's a quote from Srila Prabhupada. In this way, as you have learned from previous verses, many thousands of expansions. We're also expansion, but we are separated expansion, living entities. Swamsha Vibhinamsha. Swamsha, just like my hand is part and parcel of my body, direct expansion. And from the hands, there are so many hairs. They are also from the hand, just as my head. And from the head, there are so many hairs. So they are also expansion, but they are separated expansion. I can cut my hair, but I cannot cut my throat. Prabhupada's example. From the first canto, 3rd chapter, verse number 27, from a lecture given in Los Angeles in 1972. Okay. And here's another statement from Prabhupada about the Purushas. These 3 Purushas are living in the water, Karana, Garbha, and Kira, and are the super soul of everything that be. Karanamai Shai, Vishnu is the super soul of the collective universes. Garbhodakashai Vishnu is the super soul of the collective living beings. And the Shirodakashai Vishnu is the super soul of all living entities. From early essays and articles from Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, chapter 2. And here's the diagrammatic presentation of the different avatars. And you can see all the different forms, different avatars are mentioned and how they originate. And the original form is the Swayam Rupa on the very top left-hand side. We have the original form of Lord Krishna as a cowherd boy in Vrindavan. So that's the Swayam Rupa, Sri Krishna. And then you have, coming from Krishna, you have also Swayam Prakash, which is his own manifestation. And there are 2 different kinds of Prakash. You have the Prabhav Prakash and you have the Vaibhav Prakash. So Prabhav Prakash is when Krishna expands himself in similar ways. Just like at the time of Rasa Lila, Lord Krishna is dancing with the gopis, and each of the gopis was dancing with Krishna. Krishna expanded himself in identical expansions to dance with each of the gopis. And then similarly also in Dwarka, Lord Krishna expanded himself with his 16,100 queens. And they were all identical expansions of Lord Krishna. So that is Prabhav Prakash. And then you have Vaibhav Prakash, where there's some little difference, just like Lord Balaram is shown there. So Lord Balaram is not different from Lord Krishna. Lord Balaram, however, is a white complexion, and Krishna's bluish, darkish blue complexion. So that is Vaibhav Prakash, Lord Balaram. And you have also the form of Devaki, Devaki's son, when the Lord appears in the prison house of Kamsa. So you have the Lord appearing there in the prison house of Kamsa. That is also Vaibhav Prakash. That is Lord Krishna. Sometimes he's there. He has a 4-armed form when he appeared initially, and then at the request of the father, Vasudeva, he changed into a 2-armed form. So this was a special feature of Lord Krishna. And then you have Tad Ek Atma Rupa, which is expansions with different moods and bodily features. So you can see in the diagram, we've shown some, there is Vrasa, 4-armed Vishnu forms, or Vilasa. Vilasa, Prabhav Vilasa, Vaibhav Vilasa. There's so many different variations. From the Vilasa, you get the Chaturvyuha, where you have Sankarshan, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Vasudeva. And that's the Chaturvyuha, but then there's many expansions come from them. So they all have different names. And then we show also the Swamsha partial manifestations of the Lord. So the Swamsha avatars are all mentioned, Lila avatars, right? Lila avatars, for example, we have Lord Ramachandra, he's a Lila avatar. Lord Nrsimhadev is a Lila avatar. Matsya, Kurma, they're all Lila avatars. And then you have Purusha avatars, we talked about them a lot, the three Purushas. And then we have also Guna avatars, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. And then you have also Shaktavesha avatars. And you have, it's mentioned there's indirect, and I talked about that, direct and indirect. The indirect are the Vibhutis, mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter. And the direct avatars are also mentioned. They're different incarnations like the four Kumaras and Narada and Maharaj Prithu. Then the Manvantaras, I spoke about them. Yuga avatars we didn't speak about. Every yuga there's an avatar. So Kali Yuga avatar, we have Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes in the Kali Yuga to perform Harinam Sankirtan. It's mentioned in the 11th canto Srimad Bhagavatam. The Yuga avatars have different colors. So this is a review of all the different avatars mentioned there. It's good to know these things. Prabhupada explains, we should be very careful that although there are many thousands and thousands of incarnations of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, still, when we have to accept somebody or something as incarnation, we must refer to the Shastra. Then it will be right. Otherwise, we shall be misled. That is being done. So many in the street, in the lanes, there are so many gods, and especially the God, all the gods are going to Western countries. And Prabhupada remarked, he said one time when he was coming in the airport, the reporters interviewed him, and they asked him, Swamiji, are you also God? And Prabhupada was shocked. They said, because so many Swamijis, they all come from America, and they all tell us they're God. So are you also God? And so then Prabhupada looked at the reporters and he said to them, no, I am not God. I am simply a servant of God. But then Prabhupada became even more humble. He said, I am not even a servant of God. I am trying to be a servant of God. So this is how Prabhupada responded to that kind of situation. Because so many Mayavadi sannyasis all go to the West and they say they're God. So they're not really God. This was Prabhupada lecturing on 1st Canto, 2nd chapter, text 34 in Vrindavan in 1972. All right, so how is understanding of the demigods, various avatars, Bhagavan Swayam, relevant for us as leaders in ISKCON? So let's remember the groups we were in. Let's hear from the devotees who answered these questions. How is understanding of the demigods, first of all? How is it relevant for us as leaders? Well, we could say I'm not a leader, but just the fact that we're members of ISKCON and you're studying Bhakti Vaibhava, so it means you're not a neophyte. You're already studying Bhakti Vaibhava, so you've been around a while. So how is this relevant in ISKCON for us, to have an understanding of the demigods? Could somebody like to answer this question? Maybe people from group 1 or group 2? And it can be people who didn't speak before also. It could be the same person. Who's there in group 1, group 2? Is it relevant for us as leaders in ISKCON? Do we have to know about this thing?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandat Pranams, I am from group 2.
Yes, Prabhu. Good.
So, And I would like to mention this topic because I think there are many times this debate has occurred, especially when it comes to preaching and in that front. When we talk about only Krishna and only Krishna is supreme, we may be very well convinced also. But when we talk to the others, especially those who are very neophyte and new into bhakti, those who don't know the actual, the details of all the incarnations and Krishna is Swayam Bhagwan, they get offended when we say, we are worshipping. So what I understand is why it is important or relevant for us as leaders in ISKCON or whoever is doing the preaching work in ISKCON is that we have to be sensitive about the facts. And we should really, depending upon the appetite of the others, we should be explaining the facts to them. And when they are getting ready to accept, then we should be presenting. So I guess the leaders in ISKCON should be well trained on this aspect, and they should be trained also on how to convey this message convincingly and authoritatively to the common people or the neophytes or the non-devotees, so that they don't get offended, and at the same time, they have the chance to get into Krishna consciousness. This is my opinion, Maharaj. And also, this topic is also debatable in many places. When we see that many devotees in ISKCON also still follow demigod worship, where they say that we are just praying to get Krishna bhakti, so we can't give up our family tradition and family ritual. That is a topic which is kind of debatable, or would like to seek more advice on that, because we see they are very much initiated devotees, but then they do all these things, all these rituals in their family, and say that we just pray to get Krishna bhakti to them. So how to explain them also is very important, Maharaj. So if somebody can put that light on that.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's a very thought-provoking comment. There's a lot of points there to be discussed. Certainly, people are worshipping demigods and they're doing it to get Krishna bhakti. We're not really against it. If you go in Govardhan, when we go in Vrindavan, we hear about Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami was also very devoted to Lord Shiva. And you can see also from the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, he has a lot of devotion for Lord Shiva. So, we're not against the worship of the demigods, but they have to be, their position has to be properly understood, and certainly by the blessings of great powerful devotees like Lord Shiva, who is the greatest Vaishnava. It can be very helpful for our Krishna consciousness. But here, for example, here in Bengal, and I'm staying here in Mayapur, so in Bengal, Bengali people are very much devoted to Mother Durga and Kali and like that. It's very important. And if you say anything to criticize these kind of demigods, then you'll get in big trouble, They won't like it. They're very much attached to their demigods. Of course, they don't call them demigods, but they're very much attached to Durga Puja and Kali Puja. These are very big festivals, and their worship is done very pompously and it's a big event. So we have to be very cautious about how we touch on the topic, the positions of the demigods. It is a sensitive thing, and we should be respectful. We should respect the demigods, because they are taking on responsible duties in the universe. While they're not pure devotees, they are given very big responsibilities in the universe, and they have a big position there. So we do have to respect them carefully. That's my thoughts on my immediate thoughts on your points, Prabhu. Yes, anybody else like to comment more about the demigod worship and relevant for leaders in ISKCON?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
So one major challenges which we come across during the preaching exercise, one is this college and university preaching where you have a Saraswati Mata, and before any conferences, anything, we have to light the lamp, and then we have to break coconut and then distribute the prasadam. So as a Vaishnava, it becomes difficult to refuse it also. So what we always preach and follow, that we do the candle or deep lighting, but we accept the prasadam, but we don't eat it, because since it has not been offered to the Lord, so we keep it, and then we when we come out, we give it to somebody else. So this is what we follow it, and that's the tradition we follow. Similarly, when we go for village preaching, every village, they have this village god, which is always most of the form of Devis or Durgas. And since we go for distributing this Bhagavad Gita and talk about the Vaishnavis, so we are invited to participate in puja. So there also we follow more or less the same procedure. And since the whole thing has not been offered, prasadam offered to the Lord, we make some pretext to take the prasadam. We don't refuse them, but subsequently we give it to the cows or something, we distribute it to somebody. So that's the procedure invariably we follow in our group this preaching exercise. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yes, we should be respectful to the prasadam. We don't usually, as you say, we don't accept the prasadam of the demigods, but we do go to visit the temples. And that's a point. And you can read in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did go to the temples, the different temples, and Meenakshi and so on, and Kanyakumari and these different temples. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited all these temples. Although we could say there's a demigod temple, but we go there and offer respects. Certainly we should go and respect the demigods, it's not wrong. It's principle of devotees, we offer respects to these different personalities. And we can also pray to them, bless us that I can get devotion to Lord Krishna. Well, another... Yes, Prabhu, go ahead.
I just want to add one point, because in Malaysia, we face a lot of obstacles because of wrong impression given by previous leaders or previous preacher who actually condemn demigod worship, and they ask them to remove the pictures of the demigods from their house altar and things like that, Maharaj. So from what I have seen in Malaysia, one thing that we have to know how actually the sentiment of these people, as long as we can add in Krishna in their worship, that will give them some understanding how to do chanting or follow certain principles and things like that. And also, personally, I have seen when I was distributing some books in a shop, one man was very rudely, he was saying, condemning that we don't respect demigod, and because I was having Prabhupada's, he was saying, no, we shouldn't read these books, all that. So one point I realized that time is, I told him to whether he had read Prabhupada's books, is there anywhere in Prabhupada's books he have condemned demigods or any of the devas? So he couldn't answer me. I told him, you read the book, Prabhupada always have a high respect for the demigods, even all the other religion. He never condemned any of them. And what I have said, we, as what Maharaj was saying just now, we have to give full respect to all demigods. They are the servant of Krishna. We haven't come even to any one portion also to be servant of Krishna in that capacity. And that also will reduce will avoid this offense to the devotee of Krishna, because all of them are actually the servant of Krishna. I think in Krishna Lila, we have seen how even Indra, Brahma, all of them, Krishna put them in certain situations so that we can learn. And at the same time, we also have to give them full respect as a devotee of Lord Krishna. not as a powerful person who gives us something in return. So that's the only point I think we have to make people understand if we want to penetrate to them about the demigod worship. Because in Malaysia especially, I can see all the Hindus are very, very, even the Chinese also are very, very much sentimental on all this worship. So this is what I can see, Maharaj.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very interesting comment, yes. I remember also some years ago, there was an issue from distributing back to Godhead in Malaysia. The Malaysia Hindu Sangam were very upset because we used the term demigods. They considered the term demigod to be derogatory. They said it's not respectful. They said we should call them devas. So in Malaysia, you know, because they worship these demigods, and they say they're not demigods, these are the devas, you know. And they say to call them demigods, it's not, they say this is derogatory, this is not nice, you should give proper respect, you should call them devas. So for some time there was an issue, because actually at that time Back to Godhead magazine was doing a series of articles on the demigods. So the Malaysia Hindu Sangam, they picked up on it, they wrote and they really didn't like it, they were complaining. So you have to be very sensitive in different places, how we address these issues. And Prabhupada was always careful about criticizing, he would never criticize a person by name. There was one time actually a sannyasi, a young sannyasi, he criticized a very famous man from Bengal, and he had to run out of the temple. He was attacked, you know, people were so angry at him. So Prabhupada said you have to be very careful how you address the public. When you speak about people who have the support of the public, if they're respected by the ordinary people, you have to be very careful. We should not criticize a person by name. Prabhupada would simply ask, what is his philosophy? And then he would explain the defect in the philosophy. But he would never criticize a person by name. Okay, so those are some points about the demigods. Let's go on. About various avatars. How is understanding of various avatars relevant for us in ISKCON? Any comments on this?
So, Maharaj, like amongst one of the 7 purposes of ISKCON, one of the main purpose which Prabhupada stressed on, it was to propagate a consciousness of Krishna as he is revealed in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So by this we can understand that during the time when Prabhupada was preaching, the message of Bhagavad Gita, it was very distorted. And people were misled by various avatars. They were told to worship other avatars, and due to which the real message which Prabhupada wanted to spread, the real message of Bhagavad Gita, it was distorted. So that's why it's important for the leaders of ISKCON. Like as per the question, it's like how does understanding of various avatars is relevant for us as leaders in ISKCON. So it is relevant because one of the main functions, one of the main purpose which Prabhupada wanted was to establish Krishna as a supreme personality, which is established in scriptures. So hence we should have the understanding of various avatars, and you know how Krishna, as you have also explained, quoting Rupa Goswami, that Narayan has 60 qualities, whereas Krishna has 64 qualities, and how Shiva has 55 qualities, and Krishna is the Purna Rasa, he has 64 qualities. So it is important for us as well, so that we don't deviate from the philosophy and amongst one of the purpose of ISKCON.
Yes, thank you, Mariji. Very good. Thank you for that. Anyone else like to contribute to this?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, you told especially for ISKCON, because in ISKCON our main customer actually these Hindus. So we should not make them upset to express the demigod worship. So we should not worship demigod, but at the same time we not upset them. So we should keep our mind always that thing.
Okay, yes, I agree with you, Prabhu. But we're finished with demigods. Now we're at the various avatars.
Could I say,
yes?
When I first joined when I first joined the movement, my parents, to try and understand what I was doing, they enrolled in a transcendental meditation course. And the person who was giving the course, he at some point claimed that he was Krishna, and that he was saying that he was Krishna, and this was confusing my parents. So when I went to one of the leaders who was visiting at the time, he explained to me that the principle that the avatars or the incarnations, they have to be pointed out, they have to be in the Shastra, they have to be explained in the Shastra. So you go back to that person and say, where does it say that you are an avatar of Krishna? Where does it say that you are an incarnation? He was saying he was an incarnation of Krishna, sorry. And so so this point that you're making about it has to be in the scriptures, this leader was telling me what to, how to approach this person who's confusing my parents. So in that way, to understand that principle, that it has to be in the Shastra, and determine who's actually bogus and who's these bogus gurus.
Okay, good. Yeah, dealing with bogus gurus. Yeah, yes?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, so Maharaji. So another thing what we do that when we are opening the new temples, the local sentiments are also taken into consideration. Like even when you have been opening of this Mumbai Juhu temple, so there are a lot of devotees of Bhagwan Ram Sita, so their Vigraha is also established along with Radha Krishna. Similarly, very recently in Eastern India, one of the very important city, Patna, where a huge temple has been constructed. And since it's Eastern India, they are invariably the very staunch devotees of Ram, Lakshman, Sita, Hanuman. So so along with the main Vigraha, there's a Vigraha of Ram, Lakshman, Sita, Hanuman has also been established. So basically what we always do that depending upon the local sentiments, besides this Radha Krishna, there's other Vigraha of his incarnations are also established. Like wherever we have a safety and security issues are there, then Narsimha Dev Vigrahas are prominently established. Otherwise, we keep a smaller one. So based on this different locational and sentimental needs to bring the devotees and involve them, and these other incarnations are also included. Besides this Radha Krishna and this Nityanand, this Vigrahas. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, interesting point, considering the local sentiments. I remember when we opened the temple in Andhra Pradesh, in Hyderabad, at that time, one of the senior devotees said to Srila Prabhupada that Srila Prabhupada, he said, the people here are very much devoted to Lord Shiva, but our temple, we just have Gaur Nitai and Radha Madan Mohan and Jagannath Baladev Subhadra. So he said, don't you think we should put a Shiva Linga here? And then people will all come and they can worship Lord Shiva, and then they will also get darshan of our deities. But Prabhupada said, no, you don't have to do that. He said, if we do that, they'll think all the gods are the same. They'll think Shiva, Jagannath, they're all one, all are God. So Prabhupada didn't want that. He didn't want that we'd bring in the demigods. At least that was true in Hyderabad. I have seen recently, like sometimes, for example, there's one temple we have in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, and it was a Shiva temple originally, but they gave it to us, so they gave the temple to us, so we put our deities in, and they kept the Shiva deity. And similarly, there's other temples like that, other places we have in India, where they've given the land or they gave the place, and originally the deity of Shiva was there, a Shiva Linga was there. So they just keep it there. It's okay. But it's not given a lot of prominence over the main deities. Just like in Rajpur, here in Mayapur, at Rajpur, where we have the Jagannath deity, We have also Lord Shiva is also there, and we have also Simanta Devi. Simanta Devi is also there. Simanta Devi is there because she's involved with the pastime with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so it's relevant to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. But generally we don't promote demigod worship. Alright, and then finally, what about Bhagavan Swayam? Understanding Bhagavan Swayam as leaders of ISKCON. Any quick comments on this?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes, Maharaji?
Yes, Maharaj. So our understanding is very important that Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam, because this is a very common question we face in ISKCON, that why only Krishna? Why do you worship only Krishna and not others? There are so many gods, why don't you worship them? So once we are clear with the Shastras and with the quotes, Sanskrit quotes, scientifically we can explain to them that Krishna is the only Lord. And second is, there's a very common misconception that Krishna is the avatar of Vishnu. Krishna has come from Vishnu, like that. There's a common misconception in India. So that also can be clarified once we are very thorough with the understanding. And also, like, people consider Lord Shiva as God and other demigods. So this understanding will help in that. To refute impersonalism also, that Krishna says that Brahman is the source. I am the source of Brahman. So that also we can explain from Bhagavad Gita. We can refute impersonalism by knowing that Swayam Bhagwan. And lastly, we can explain the difference between the incarnations, demigods, and Bhagwan. If we have this understanding, then we can explain to people what is an incarnation, what is Bhagwan, Swayam, Krishna, and who are the demigods. Because that is also, people equate incarnations with demigods, and people equate Krishna with demigods and other incarnations. So this all can be done if we have proper understanding.
Yes, good.
Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you. A lot of points. I would like to bring up, though, sometimes people will say, well, there are many scriptures, and different scriptures say different things. You know, you could read scriptures which say Shiva is God. I remember when I was distributing books for the BBT library party, we were distributing sets of books, and it was a long time ago in the 1970s, and we were taking the books around South India to different temples, and so we'd show them the books, you know, and in the books there are pictures, and they would, sometimes there's a picture of Lord Shiva, and he's meditating on Lord Krishna. So we showed them, you know, they look and they'd see this picture, and they say, this picture is the wrong way round. It should be Krishna meditating on Shiva. You know, so different people have their different understanding, and there's so many different books, and they say different things. It's sometimes it's a challenge for us also to show that this Bhagavan Swayam, this is coming from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's the Srimad Bhagavatam which is actually the ripened fruit in the scriptures, but there's so many scriptures saying so many different things, and you have to get the real truth from the cream of all the Vedas. And so we argue with them on these points. There's a lot of, it's difficult presenting these things. But certainly, devotees in ISKCON, we should know these things, and we should be able to present some of these points to the people. We should try our best to present, to help them to understand demigods, avatars, and the position of Lord Krishna as Bhagavan Swayam. It's very relevant for us. Okay, here's some points from Srila Prabhupada. We are therefore restricting not to worship any other. Therefore, when I started this mission, many friends advised me, why don't you make it God consciousness? This is bogus. God consciousness, Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, they'll put so many gods. Here is another god. Here is another god. here is another incarnation, here is another avatar, all nonsense. Place actual, who is God, Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam. So try to understand our position. Prabhupada's lecturing in Vrindavan in 1972 on Srimad Bhagavatam 1-2-26. All right, so let's have a look at what we've been talking about today. We've been reviewing chapter 3, the overview of chapter 3. We heard it began with the first 5 verses about the Purusha avatars, and then it went into the Leela avatars, and at the end of the Leela avatars, then of course we heard about the position of Lord Krishna. All right, so then we've talked about demigod worship, and we've been refuting demigod worship. At the same time, we're giving proper respect to the demigods. But the demigod worship, if we worship the demigods independently of Lord Krishna, it's not good, it's not proper. Right? And then various kinds of avatars. Well, we've heard so many avatars. Yuga avatars, Leela avatars, Guna avatars, Shaktavesha avatars, Vibhutis are also avatars, indirect avatars. And we have also Purusha avatars, different kinds of avatars, all different expansions coming from the one Supreme Lord Krishna. And then we've been talking about why Lord Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam. He is the origin. He's not just avatar, but he is avatari. He's the origin of all the avatars. And at the same time, he comes himself also as an avatar. He comes himself, but he is also the cause, the original source of all the avatars. And then we've been speaking about the relevance of these topics for people in ISKCON, for devotee leaders in ISKCON. This is Prabhupada's mood and mission. Certainly we want to represent Prabhupada's mood and mission. We should know. We should know these things. We should be able to present these things. When we're asked, when we're challenged, we should be able to defeat their arguments. And Prabhupada would be very pleased. That's what Prabhupada wanted, that we would represent his teachings nicely to others. All right, so tomorrow we have class again. We're going to go on to talk about the role Prabhupada Srimad Bhagavatam plays in his mission. So we'll be speaking about that. And you can check also here the references, the preface, then 114, 1116, and 125. So there's 4 places there. Particularly, we want to hear about the role of Srimad Bhagavatam in the mission. And then we will also be talking about different points that we consider especially significant for people in ISKCON, and explain why, based on the 2nd chapter, verses 12 to 22. This is an important section in the 2nd chapter. We're going to look at the progression which is there in these verses, from verse number 12 up to 22, and we'll see the progression and how it's very important for us as devotees in Krishna consciousness. So that's what we want to cover tomorrow. A little bit more from Srila Prabhupada. The appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his different activities are all confidential, even to the Vedic literatures. Yet they are displayed by the Lord to bestow mercy upon the conditioned souls. So the appearance and disappearance are certainly confidential. Generally we don't find so much about the disappearance of the Lord. That's very confidential. But it's also, the appearance is also confidential. Just hearing about the birth of the Lord, how he appears, that people who hear that they first of all should have faith, otherwise they may simply be offensive. And then Prabhupada continues, we should always take advantage of the narrations of the activities of the Lord, which are meditations on Brahman in the most convenient and palatable form. From the 3rd chapter, text 35, purport. All right. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Are there any questions? Is that a hand up, Mataji? Is it?
Hey Krishna Maharaj, I have a question.
Yes, Mataji, yeah? Go ahead. What's your question, Mataji? Diksha?
Yes, Maharaj, I have a question, Maharaj.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Maharaj?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
I'm hearing you. Are you not hearing me? Hare Krishna.
Auntie, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, what's the question?
Maharaj, it seems her internet is unstable, so Chaitanya Hari Prabhu has the next question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
I just want to some clarification on this Prabha Prakash, which come from Swayam Prakash expansion of Krishna, because I heard that some explanation. There's a parallel pastime, like for example, in that shows that Krishna is the supreme person. The extinction criteria of Krishna as a supreme person, where even when Krishna says when he left Vrindavan to Madura, he told Vrindavan Vasi, all the Vrajabasi, that he will come back. And this explanation was given by Bhanu Maharaj. He says, even though when Krishna left, we understand that Krishna never come back. But at the same time, it seems that Krishna came back after a few months, and there's a parallel lila where one portion, one of the lila is he is present with all the gopis, another at the same time is not present with all the gopis. Maharaj. This is another criteria which says that Krishna at the same time he can be at two different kind of activity. And another example also when he comes in Dwarka also, there's many aspects that he can be at two times doing at the same time different activity will be exposed to the same set of all the Vrajavasis or all his associates. So maybe you can give me some more explanation on that, Maharaj.
Well, certainly we know that Narada Muni went to visit Krishna in his different palaces in Dwarka, and he saw that in different palaces Krishna was engaged in many different activities. That although Krishna was there in so many palaces, in each palace he was engaged in different activities. So that was seen by Narada Muni, that he understood how Lord Krishna could expand himself. Now usually the yogis, when they expand, each expansion will engage the same activity, just like a mirror reflection. But when Krishna expands, each of the expansions can act independently. So Krishna was acting in one palace, Krishna was talking with his wife, and in another palace Krishna was playing chess with a friend, and in another palace Krishna was with the children, And so different palaces, Krishna was engaged in many different activities. At the same time. Is that your point?
Yes, Maharaj. Thanks, Maharaj.
And it's also described about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he had his Avirbhav expansion. He could enter into the body of someone. And he could actually enter into their body and empower them so that they actually knew everything.
Thank you, Maharaj. Yeah, that's thank you very much.
Okay, Mataji, yes? Is your microphone okay now? Is it Diksha Mataji?
Yes, Maharaj. Yes.
Yeah.
Maharaj, I wanted to ask that Satyu, the white color incarnation, what is the name of that incarnation? And then Treta, red color?
Well, you can get that information in the 11th canto. If you look in the 11th canto, you'll see there is questions by it's Maharaj Nimi, and he's asking Karabhajana Muni about the incarnations for each age, and he goes through the 4 different yugas, and he explains the names of each incarnation, the color in each yuga, and he explains the different names. There are a number of different names there for the Satya Yuga and for the Treta Yuga. They're all there in the 11th canto. I don't...
Maharaj, thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, what is the meaning of Krishna is one without a second?
One without a second, well, means no one's equal to him.
Thank you, Maharaj. And Maharaj, one more question. Why in ISKCON we celebrate so many incarnations? Why do we celebrate? Like we are celebrating for the Leela avatars, and we don't celebrate for the other avatars. So our Leela avatars are secondary ones, the one we have to follow. And how should one should be fixed on Shyam Sundar Rupa of Krishna, despite there are so many incarnations. So for sometimes for protection we worship Narsimha. So how to be fixed, or should we be fixed or not? We can just be like, how to find our Ishtadev. Like I sometimes get confused with so many avatars.
Well, it's up to you who you want to have your Ishtadev. Nobody's going to tell you, you know. You have to consider which particular form of the Lord you're most attracted to. It's a question of your heart. You know yourself, the feeling of your heart. So you have to consider which avatar, which particular form of the Lord and pastimes you find most attractive. Now for some people they're very attracted to Lord Ramachandra because he's such a good, ideal son, and he's the best, very good husband and like that, And so some people, they like very much Lord Ramachandra, and some other people, they're very much attracted to Lord Nrsingadev, that he's giving protection and is ferocious to the demons but very kind to his own people. And so it's a question of your heart, which particular form of the Lord are you most inclined to? Some people even worship Lord Varaha. Lord Varaha is also quite popular in South India. If you like boars, He's a transcendental boar. But anyway, the point is, it's up to every individual. We can't tell you who your Istadeva is. It will manifest to you by the heart which form of the Lord you're most attracted to. Now, certainly the sweetest form of the Lord is the Shyamsundar form. It's a threefold bending form, playing the flute, decorated with a peacock feather, and he's, taking care of the cows. Of course, you may not like it that he has so many gopis. It's just a question of what is the mood of your heart. If you don't mind the competition with all the gopis, then it's all right. But certainly, he's very sweet, Shyam Sundar. He's all attractive. And he's happy in Vrindavan, which is, rural. It's not like living in the city. And Dwarka is opulent, but Vrindavan is sweet. So are you more inclined to the opulent mood of Krishna, or do you like the sweetness? In Vrindavan there's a lot of sweetness. Sweetness. He's with the cowherd boys. You may be a woman just now, but in the spiritual world you may be a cowherd boy. So you could enjoy being with Krishna every day and go out in the forest with Krishna, with the cows, and play with Krishna. You see? And we have to consider which form of the Lord do you find most appealing. Why do we have so many avatars and festival? We can celebrate all of these. It depends on the resources of the temple. Prabhupada said every day you can have a festival. Yes, every day you can do it. It's up to, it's just a question of resources and how much time and facilities we have to celebrate all these festivals. But yes, we do like to worship all the Lord's incarnations.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your question. Very nice. All right, any other questions? Yes, Mataji has a question.
Yes, Maharaj. Maharaj, as you also mentioned, and it's mentioned that amongst the Guna avatar, Brahma, Shiv, Vishnu and Shiva are there. So you mentioned that Brahma is in the mode of passion because he has to create. But Maharaj, when we dive into deep study, we see that even Shiv, in the form of Sadashiv, he's also part of creation. Vishnu is also part of creation. So how can we understand this then?
Yes, it's true. Lord Shiva also plays a part in creation, but the primary focus, Lord Shiva's main service is at the end of at the time of devastation. But he is active in all phases of creation. He's active in creation, he's active in maintenance, but his main focus of service is actually at the time of devastation, at the time of the annihilation, where he will do his dance. So Lord Shiva is active in that sense. It's not that Lord Shiva is in the mode of ignorance, but he associates with that mood. And he gives a lot of mercy to people like ghosts and so on. Generally he resides at the crematorium. And he does do a lot of, he's very merciful, He places people who are born as ghosts, he will place them into the womb of people who somehow they have, at the wrong time they're having children. So he will give them the chance to get a human birth. So Lord Shiva's doing these kinds of activities. So he's very compassionate, very special. That's why we see Vaishnavam Yata Shambhu, that he's the greatest Vaishnava. But still he's not Vishnu Tattva, he's between the material, he's between Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva. Yeah?
Shiv Tattva.
Yeah.
Is considered separate from Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva.
Right. So
Thank you so much for answering.
Okay. All right. Any other questions here? Yes?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Yes, Mataji.
Prabhuji, many times I noticed and saw that many people are influenced with other avatars, and all the times, though in Noida also we have Ram Darbar, Ram Parivar in the temple. So many people visit because of there are deities of Ram and Sita. And even I noticed that they chant the Maha Mantra by glorifying, saying Ram, Ram, rather Krishna. So they should be considered as equal to the Vaishnavas or something else. We can differentiate with them because they are all the time very aged and don't have the clear concept that we are glorifying Krishna by chanting this Maha Mantra. They have Rama in their mind, in their consciousness. So how can we differentiate do we have to differentiate them with the Vaishnavas, or we have to treat them equally sometimes? Or I have to clarify them?
Yes, we also see them as Vaishnavas. They're devoted to Lord Rama. So Lord Rama is also God. He's also, you know, he's avatar. Of course, he's the expansion coming from Lord Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he told Murari Gupta, you know, Murari Gupta was a great devotee of Lord Rama. And Lord Chaitanya told him, you should worship Radha and Krishna, that they're the supreme Lord. But Murari Gupta told Lord Chaitanya, he said that the next day, he said, I will have to give up my life because you asked me to do it and I can't follow your instruction. But Lord Chaitanya said, no, it's okay, I understand. Now you are Hanuman. You must be Hanuman because your mood is like that. And so Lord Chaitanya understood that, you know, some people have the mood. They're devotees of Lord Rama. And so, all right. They're also Vaishnavas. They have the mood of being the servant of Lord Ram. And we read Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he was traveling in South India, sometimes a Ram Bhakta would bring him to his home. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would go there and he would eat the food cooked by the Brahmana, who was a Ram Bhakta. So certainly Mahaprabhu recognized them as being devotees, as being Vaishnavas. So, and sometimes, you know, people may chant the Ram first in the Maha Mantra. And so that's how it is in the Vedas. And in the original Vedas, the mantra is like that. And so what I heard, the story I heard from Jayapataka Swami Maharaj, he told me this. He said that originally, people were complaining to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that you're giving this mantra to everyone to chant. But it's a Vedic mantra. A Vedic mantra should only be chanted by Brahmanas. And if you're not a Brahmana, you shouldn't chant the Vedic mantras. So, you know, people who are not Brahmanas, they would have to go to a Brahmana to hear the Vedas. So they were complaining to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that you're chanting this Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, everybody, they're all chanting the Vedic mantra, it's not good. So then Lord Chaitanya changed it and he put Krishna first and then he said, now let everybody chant Hare Krishna mantra. Because he changed it, he put Krishna first and then Rama. So there's one explanation, you know.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Yes, there's another question here.
Maharaj, I had another question from 1.3.28. Prabhupada writes in the purport that a living being can become godly by developing. A living being can become godly by developing the 78 transcendental attributes with fullness, but he can never become a god like Shiva, Vishnu, or Krishna. He can become a Brahma in due course. So, Maharaj, I wanted to ask that here Shiva, Vishnu, or Krishna, why they are used simultaneously? Like Shiva, Vishnu, or Krishna, one cannot become that, but one can become Brahma. So, is Shiva not the demigod, or is he higher than Brahma? Like
yes, Shiva is higher than Brahma. Shiva is higher than Brahma. Shiva is between Vishnu and the Jivas. Brahma is a Jiva. We can be Brahma, but we cannot be Shiva. We can get the position of Brahma, but we cannot get the position of Shiva. Brahma is a Jiva, but Shiva is not a Jiva. Shiva is higher than the Jiva. Not an ordinary Jiva like us. Shiva is special, right? Between the material, between Vishnu and the living and the ordinary conditioned souls. Shiva is the yogurt. Vishnu is the milk. And so we have to understand the special position of Lord Shiva. That's why Shiva has more qualities than Brahma. Although Shiva takes birth from Brahma in the universe, he takes his birth from, but that's in the universe. But Lord Shiva also has his abode outside of the universe. He has his Kailash. Kailash is between the material and the spiritual world.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, in Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, there is one part mentioned that there is a glance in between the material world and the spiritual world. And Shiva, like, I am not clear with that concept. That is Shiva the mediator between Krishna glancing the material universe? That was the
Well,
point.
what I know is that at the time of creation, the living entities are impregnated into the material nature. And that glance of Vishnu, that is carried by Lord Shiva. The glance of Vishnu is carried by Lord Shiva. And he carries the glance of all the living entities to impregnate them into the material nature. Because all the living entities, they go into the body of Mahavishnu at the time of the inhalation of Mahavishnu, at the end of the life of Brahma. There's a total annihilation and everything enters. Mahavishnu breathes in. So all the living entities who are not pure, they will enter into the body of Mahavishnu. And then when Mahavishnu breathes out, then they come out again. But they come out, it's a glance of Vishnu. It's a glance, and the living entities are impregnated into that glance of Vishnu. And that glance of Vishnu is carried by Lord Shiva into the material nature. This is how Lord Shiva is performing his duties. One of his duties is to do like that.
Maharaj, in Bhagavad Gita, there is one statement that Krishna glances on Mother Nature. So, how do we understand this then?
Yeah, Krishna, the material nature moves under... Because the material nature is described as Krishna's separated energy. Separated energy. So, Krishna is aloof from it. He's, just like, maybe you have there's a man and woman and they're separated from each other. And so the relationship is not, very, very nice, not so close, not so intimate. So the same way, Krishna looks over the material nature. He doesn't, it's his separated energy. It's not very intimate to him. So he glances over it.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, is this another question here?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Yes.
Maharaj, is Mahesh Dham also eternal?
Is it what?
Mahesh Dham, that is Shivji Dham, is that also eternal?
Is it eternal? Yes, it's eternal. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, seems like questions are finished, so we'll be back tomorrow night. So, Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki.
Jai.